I'm Lauren from Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., a Marvel Universe fan show, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other incredible geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And welcome to Play Comics, where once again we're looking at a video game based on a comic property and how well it represents that source material. And despite all of the warning that I should not be talking about this subject on a Monday, we're doing it anyway, because today we are looking at Garfield's Nightmare. And I have Super D Parson here to help me figure out just what kind of lasagna is the best kind of lasagna. D, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm really good, and I'm really excited. Ryan Estrada, when I was asking him if there were other people I should get on the show, said, if you don't get D on, then I will never come back. That might be a lie, but he really did say I should get you on.
Brian is such a great guy. It's so fun to talk to. Like, he is such a trailblazer in the comic scene, and it's so fun to be able to just talk comics with him, especially Garfield. He and I have both a real, affinity for Garfield. So any type of Garfield related news, we're usually jabbing at each other about it. So it's fun that he's become something of a PR agent for me in terms of getting onto more podcasts and stuff. And I'm very thankful for him, and I hope he knows how grateful I am for him and his friendship and everything.
Well, I'm grateful for both of you, but tonight I'm more grateful for you because you're the one that I'm talking to. What is it that got you into Garfield in the first place?
So it's a bit of a long story. I grew up in a sundown town in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay. First off, that's horrible that those even still existed back then, and I know they still exist now, and ugh.
Me and my family were the only black family living in this town for a good couple of years. All this really into Garfield because, when going to school, teachers and students really didn't like me. And it was really hard for me to make friends and find ways to really express myself. I was really had a lot of learning disabilities, and I had trouble reading and doing schoolwork and stuff. We weren't allowed to go to the town's public library, so we'd have to go out of town to check out books, and that's how I discovered Garfield. I checked out Garfield books so much that the librarians permanently withdrew one of the books for me, and I actually still have it to this day.
Nice.
His sixth book, Garfield Eats His Heart Out. And that book really inspired me to learn how to read and get into art. So I started making comics, through my love of Garfield and my love for Nintendo and video games. And in third grade, I made a comic that made a friend laugh so hard he fell out of his desk, red in the face, tears running down his eyes. The downside was he had asthma, but at the time, little me didn't know the severity of that. But that was that moment where I felt that one, someone was able to see past my skin color and was able to like me for who I was. And with Garfield, I learned how to be okay with myself because, he's a bad influence. He's fat, lazy, kicks Odie off the table, ships Nermal to Abu Dhabi, and all this. He has all these bad habits, but he was okay with himself, and he loved himself for who he was. And in some twisted manner, I found inspiration in that he was okay with who he was. So I should learn to be okay with who I am and, be okay with the things about myself that I can't change. So I like to joke that Garfield helped me combat racism growing up and has been that kind of a role model for me. And so he has been, such a affinity of inspiration for me getting into art and cartooning, to where up to when I was doing my first comic strip, when I was preparing to do my first comic strip at 19, Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield, brought me under his wing and under the wings of the Paws Inc. artists and helped mentor me into cartooning and helped me get my first comic strip in our local paper in 2015. And then from that point, it was just been a nice relationship with everyone, got to do fun things with them. And now, as of right now, I'm now a nationally syndicated newspaper cartoonist, and my comics are appearing right next to Garfield.
That is so. Saying that's so cool sounds horrible to me because of like the actual horrible way that it started. But it is great that you could get something like this to pull you out of that horrible situation. I keep saying horrible, but I can't think of any other better word that I can actually say on a PG-13ish show.
Yeah, no, I tell this story just to show like my growth and my evolution as a person. Like I've always, I try to be open about who I am and try to be loving and respectful of everybody, regardless of who they are. Because, I grew up in that type of environment where no one accepted me for who I was. So it's really, Garfield has really helped me learn how to combat that at an early age. So that's kind of what my philosophy is from now on, is that when I make comic strips, I make comics, to bring smiles to people's faces, to be, something of an entertainer, to bring just a moment of clarity and just like be a rest stop for people. Like, when you're doom scrolling on social media, whenever you see something from my comic strip Rosebuds that you know what you're getting out of it. You're getting a light-hearted fun out of it, and it helps you just get through the rest of your day. So that's kind of been one of the major philosophies that I work with when I make my comics, and that's a part of all the inspiration and stuff I've got out of Garfield.
And it makes a lot of sense because Garfield is a character that he knows he has flaws. He knows he's not necessarily in the best situations in the world, but he knows what he's capable of and he knows what he is not capable of. So, he goes and he does his thing and he wants people to just let him do his thing. He mostly lets them do their thing as long as they're not bothering him. There are plenty of
Mhm.
instances where Odie is being annoying and he either just is like, okay, fine, Odie, I'll let you show me some affection, or okay, now Odie's off in the backyard being annoying. That's fine. I can go back to sleep.
Yeah, that's something that I like to when it comes to like comic strip characters and stuff. I always like to look a little deeper into their psyche and stuff. And Garfield is as straight as it can be. Like he is fat lazy. He embraces that. And again, not necessarily the best role model, but it's that persistence to be okay with who he is and that confidence to have to be okay with who he is, really has went a long way for me.
I mean, you have to imagine that Garfield knows he's not going to live a super long life since he's eating multiple lasagnas a day, but he's enjoying those lasagnas while he's eating them. So, I mean, there is something to that. Do what you love and have fun doing it.
He's here for a good time, not a long time.
And even the rest of the cast here, I mean, there's something to learn from all of them as well, I think.
Yeah, I think like Odie, for example, like, he's incredibly optimistic. I think that one of the things I love about him is that no matter how cruel Garfield, treats him, he's always willing to turn the other side of the tongue and lick him with it. And, and so, I think that really goes a long way to show like Odie's willingness to just be happy. Like he doesn't need a lot. Just give him a bone, give him a dingle ball. He'll give him affection. He'll be by your side forever. And Garfield, as sparingly as he does it, he knows that he wouldn't be who he is without Odie.
And John just taking care of both of them, going in there, not necessarily doing the fun things that he wants to do, but doing what needs to get done to have everybody taken care of.
He's the everyman, the guy that everyone, either makes fun of for being who he is or they wind up becoming. Also have that love, that affection of like, he's also a cartoonist. It's not often explored in the comic strip, but it's often explored in other mediums like Garfield and Friends or the Garfield show or the Garfield comics. Like those stuff is more explored in his avenues of being a cartoonist, and I think that's really neat. So it's just that extra avenue of just like, humanity behind him. He's kind of a dork, but he's okay with that as well. And now that he has Liz after the first 25 years of being rejected by women, he's kind of grown into this lovable dork that everyone loves.
And Liz sitting there being the voice of, hi, you can do better. Don't just settle for what you know you can do. Actually reach out there and do more than you think you can do.
Hmm.
Everybody needs that in their life.
Yeah, yeah, and like I'm fully aware of like the how do I say this, the ironic fandom of Garfield when it comes to like Gorefield or stuff that kind of deconstructs Garfield, like lasagna cat and stuff like that. And there I know there's a lot to that, and I completely see that as well. But for me, I do have this genuine love and appreciation for the comic strip in particular. That's kind of where, my love of comics came from. My love of seeing just like, I'm speaking on this on a from an Indiana native, because Jim is also an Indiana native. He's from Muncie, and that's where Garfield is based in, and I'm like 40 minutes away from both of them. Is that, growing up, I learned as I was growing up and learning about Garfield and Jim Davis and Paws Inc. and all this, that, they're basically hometown heroes. Like Indiana isn't necessarily known or very supportive of the arts, but there's a lot of artists that are around here doing stuff that people don't realize. Like we have cartoonists that are currently working on Blondie and Flash Gordon and High and Lois and the Jumble Strip and like all these other legacy comics and stuff that are being made in this state. And I think that's amazing. But when it comes to Garfield and Jim Davis, Jim Davis was a farm boy and he made this global phenomenon based here, and that's something I've always was inspired by. Like, people would consider and call Jim a sellout or, lazy and stuff. But what people don't see is that everyone that is working with Garfield genuinely loves working with Garfield. They're having the time of their lives. The stories that the Paws Inc. people would tell me, the stuff that they would share, it's all contagious. Like these people really loved what they were doing with this guy. I recently made a Twitter post about, Jim told me a little after he sold off Garfield that, he's happy to just work on the comic strip now and not have to worry about the business side of things. And it shows in the comic, like it's really loose and cartoony now. It's really fun and expressive. And you could tell, like, these guys are still nearly 50 years later, still enjoying just being cartoonists. And that's something that I will always have a soft spot, a deep appreciation for, that most people don't really get to see outside of, what they see other people telling them how they perceive Garfield.
The business side and just the sheer volume of everything just fascinates me. Like, how many daily strips would you say it takes to equal like a page of a more traditional comic?
I guess it depends on, like, because comic strips are handled differently than like comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So it truly varies. Like, for example, like the mainline Garfield comic books, comic collections that contains the actual newspaper strips. It's currently on its like it's about to break 80 books, and that's just the newspaper strip. And I think they do like 6 month intervals of like 6 months worth of comics. So there's over like 300 comics per book. So, and I think they're only in like 2023 right now or 2024. So they're still a ways back, and we're currently 2026. So they're going to go on for a while.
Just the aspect, I think, of making a strip where you know that you have to kind of account for people, that the newspaper is just suddenly going to be picking you up I mean, Garfield, you don't really have that worry because everybody has Garfield. But you have people who are going to miss a day of the comic for whatever reason. Being able to have the storyline make sense. Like, that is insane that you can keep something going for that long.
It is tough, and speaking from firsthand experiences. Like, oh my goodness, it is hard. Because I'm, as I said, I'm doing a daily comic strip as well. So I'm doing full 7 days a week strip. It gets hard, especially because my strip is more character driven, whereas something like Garfield is more gag based. So the jokes of Garfield more so pertain to the gags of it, whereas something like Rosebuds is more character based. Like the characters have relationships with each other, their personalities, stuff that works specifically for certain characters and stuff. There's a lot more nuance to it than a typical Garfield strip. So there's a lot more to it, and it's a lot harder to pull off because of that. And especially when I do story arcs, sometimes I'll do a story arc that's 1 or 2 weeks long, and you have to keep in mind, as you said, that sometimes people will miss a day. So you have to figure out how to make each individual strip in those 2 weeks of a story arc not only be self-contained enough that if people read it at that moment that they still get context, but also keep the story moving forward. It is not easy at all.
I do not envy you at all.
I spend half my time stressing how to make it good.
I mean, from what I've seen, you do a good job. I also don't get the newspaper, so I have to remember to actually go online. So I get to read more than a day at a time, which I'm sure is a whole different experience too.
Yeah, a lot of people will, on, like, I guess talking about Rosebuds a bit, will read it online. And that's fine because there's a strong online following that's reading the comics. So I'm posting the comics online for people to read. Sometimes people talk about they see it in the newspaper. So it's just a back and forth depending on where people are going. But I try to be as involved in the community as I can be and tell them about share my insights about the comic, about things that I'm doing with it or whatnot. And it's really fun. Like again, like in regards to like the differences of like Garfield, where again it's gag based, so you're just there to get a slight chuckle of Garfield saying some office humor based gag about him hating Mondays or loving coffee or something like that. But with Rosebuds, I have to be a little more careful about that sort of stuff and be more mindful about the type of does this work for the character? Like that stuff still works, is still handled with Garfield, but there's less, if you want to do this with Garfield, there's less nuance to it, right? So there's a lot of there's a lot of like gears turning when trying to make a proper Rosebud comic.
Well, we're going to go make sure all those gears are oiled up well while I drop some promos for a few other shows.
Have you ever turned on a TV show and you're like, are they singing right now?
Every single night, the same arrangement. I go out and fight the fight.
Was this show always in black and white and set in the 1940s?
He housed us.
There's no booze, no legal coups.
Sounds like a snooze. There's barely any dudes.
Don't add on. There's a rhythm.
Are they speaking in iambic pentameter?
Be this not the time that men are men and women are property?
Property, you call me. But tryest to plow this acre, and thy blade may get broken.
This is Gimmicks, a podcast about those high-concept, experimental, structure-breaking gimmick episodes of television.
From musicals to very special episodes to bottle episodes, backwards episodes, episodes that focus on one minor character.
Any TV episode that breaks from its own formula in some way. Sometimes they're the best, sometimes they're divisive, but they're always a little weird, probably memorable, and very interesting to talk about.
I'm Derek.
I'm David.
And we're two queer men who love learning and talking about TV and want to share the complicated ways that these types of episodes get made.
We'll be exploring the whole landscape of television, whether it's comedy, drama, or animation, uncovering the history of concept episodes, digging into how these concepts work and how they fit into their respective shows, and celebrating this wonderful and sometimes a little messy medium of television, while of course having fun along the way.
Gimmicks is part of the Glitterjaw Queer podcast collective of shows.
And if you're into it, give this show a subscribe on any podcast platform, and you can find all the links to do so at gimmickspodcast.com.
And until next time, friends,
Keep being weird.
Hello there.
I'm Cass.
And I'm Tommy.
And we're the host of Distant Echoes, a Star Wars podcast where we travel through the galaxy watching every Star Wars TV series in whatever order we please.
If you love impassioned deep dives that touch on almost every corner of the Star Wars universe you could possibly imagine.
And if you're looking for a Star Wars podcast with hosts who aren't experts.
And don't pretend to be.
But instead are just a couple of goofs who engage with the fandom a healthy amount.
Then come check us out.
We're also a proud member of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective, so you can bet we have some pretty gay takes on Star Wars, which means, yes, we do love the Star Wars Holiday Special, so if you can't take that, maybe this isn't the podcast for you.
But if it is, and you love Lumpy as much as we do, then find us wherever you get your podcasts and on social media at Distant Echoes Pod on Blue Sky
and Distant Echoes SW on Instagram. Goodbye.
Those are some great things to check out. But first, let's finish up here. So, Dee, what is really bringing us together here is this 2007 game, Garfield's Nightmare, that came out for the Nintendo DS. It was made by Shinen Multimedia and the Game Factory. It's Garfield. He's having a nightmare. You run through and do things. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but it has about as much story as a Garfield daily strip. So if you like those, you're going to like this.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely, so it is so interesting because, in similar to the game, I don't know, I never knew if it was just a coincidence or if there was an intention behind it, but there was that one, what was it called? Oh my gosh. It was a ride, a Garfield ride called Garfield's Nightmare. Based at Kennywood. Yeah, based at Kennywood. That was apparently, really bad. So bad that people were so happy that after Viacom took it over, they dismantled the ride and demanded everything to be destroyed so it couldn't be sold off onto the black market.
There's a defunct land about that ride.
Yes, I love Defunct Land. But yeah, I watched that one quite a bit. That's why I was like, I've always wondered if it was just a coincidence that those two shared similar themes as well. Because if I'm correct, there was also food monsters in the DS game.
Oh, I mean, there's every kind of monster in the DS game. It's amazing. I'll sit here and say, it has about as much story as Garfield, but also it has as much cool little weird stuff as Garfield. I mean, I think the simpleness is where you really get to jump into the creativity because you can't have super complex everything. Something in your story kind of needs to be simple. And the simple thing with Garfield is here's your premise of what's going to be happening. And then you get to go crazy with how it happens. And they take full advantage of it with this game.
Right. And it plays as it's a side scrolling platformer, so it plays like one, like what a typical bargain bin 2D platformer would. 2.5D would be like something akin to New Super Mario Brothers, where it's 3D models, but it's on a 2D plane, and you're side scrolling through it, collecting stuff, getting to the end of the level.
The bosses that they have in here, I think, are one of my favorite things. They're not Garfield bosses in the sense that they're pulled from the comic, but they are in the sense that they're just really punny. Like Warren Batty is the first one. I mean, that's just, it's crazy. You get this thing in there that, okay, it's silly if you don't know what they're doing, but if you know what they're doing, it's triple silly.
Actually, what I always liked about all of these Garfield games, which what I always found so fascinating, is that they almost always started with comic strip cutscenes. So Garfield Caught in the Act started out the story started out as an exclusive comic strip cutscene where Garfield was watching TV, dismantles it, and then TV monster comes in and brings him into the TV world. And the same thing kind of happens with Garfield's Nightmare, where there's a comic strip that comes, a comic strip introduction where there's a Sunday title panel, then he's eating food and goes to sleep, and he's narrating the whole thing.
Normally, I would say that a game or something just being a dream is lazy writing, cop out. Okay, somebody just ran out of space at the end. But when you can do it like this and you know that's what you're doing and you're just leaning into it, then that is a good way to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of your bosses is Patrick Sweaty. This whole thing is, I mean, imagine any kind of Garfield's crazy dreams and just imaginary situations that he puts himself in. And that's the kind of situation you're going to be finding yourself in the levels here. You're going through an old castle, or you're going through a lava place, or a cloud level, or an ice level, because it's a video game. So, of course, there's an ice level. I mean, it's a nice, short little game, but you get to go in there and just have some fun with it.
Mm-hmm. I never really understood the mini games, because apparently they had mini games within the levels as well. Where Garfield's doing something like kicking trash cans and bombs come out, and collecting coins out of that. I don't know. There's just it feels very Crash Bandicoot-esque, where you have those checkpoint side levels, and you go collect these tokens, and then you go into a level to break extra boxes and stuff. That it's kind of weird because you don't expect that out of Garfield.
Yeah, those to me just felt like, yeah, we need to have some more stuff in here, so let's pad it out a little bit. I mean, it's not horrible, but definitely not 100% needed in there either.
Right.
Getting to go through here as Garfield, going on everything, you're, like you were saying earlier, fat and lazy. You don't get to be extremely fast with anything. You don't jump super high with anything. You're acting the way I feel like Garfield would expect you to act.
Yeah. He's very go with the flow here. But he also, doesn't want to be here. He's collecting donuts and pizzas and various other types of food. And yeah, it's like, because I compare it to I won't say compare it to, but there were some PlayStation 3D platformers that came out. This is kind of like an extension of that. More, it doesn't really take full advantage of the comic strip aesthetic like those games did, but it's really like as if you're playing a Garfield comic strip platformer.
I mean, honestly, there isn't really much else to say about this one. It's just a nice, simple game. You play as Garfield, you get through it. But
yeah.
What I was really excited to talk with you about here too is, if we're going to be talking about a nightmare anyway, that's kind of scary. You brought up the idea of Garfield's scary scavenger hunt.
Yes, so I feel like that's the quintessential Garfield game. And what's so bizarre about it is it was a flash game for the Garfield website. And that's, Scary Scavenger. And then it was so popular, it got a sequel, Scary Scavenger Hunt 2.
You can find websites now that have them emulated on there. It's not perfect because Flash is weird, but it exists. And that's basically the only way you're going to be able to find it, unless you happen to have it downloaded from, I don't want to think about how many years ago.
Oh yeah. And especially after Nickelodeon shut down the Garfield website after the buyout, which I do not understand why they did. That was one of the most thorough websites, especially to read the comic strip. They had an incredible deep dive archive with a word search to find specific comics that you wanted to read. So if you brought up the word, lasagna, it'll pick out every single comic that included either lasagna or the word lasagna. And it was so thorough about it. And all that's just gone. the Garfield.com link now takes you to Nickelodeon's version of a Garfield website, which is just a home portal to Nickelodeon.com. So it's so sad. It's so heartbreaking. That was one of the most bewildering changes I do not understand they did when they did. And the worst part was they did it on Garfield's birthday.
Oh, I want to think that somebody didn't realize they were doing that, but you don't accidentally do that.
Right. I have many things to say I feel about current era, about how they're handling Garfield, but that's for another time. But it's with Scary Scavenger Hunt, and this is kind of like a tangent about the Garfield website as a whole, because there was a lot of games on there. There was like Dingle Ball, Kick the Pooch, there was one where you had to hit Garfield with sheep while he's sleeping. There were even some US Acre games. They were more educational, but they were like games based off of US Acres, since they were also a part of the Garfield portal.
I mean, just the fact that they remembered that US Acres existed, I think is amazing.
Yeah. They after US Acres left the newspapers, they brought it back as a webcomic to just upload on Garfield.com, which I thought was really cool. Because unfortunately, I recently bought a book, an imported an imported book, which was like the last U.S. Acres comic strip collection to be published. The U.S. did not get the complete set of U.S. Acres completely collected in book format. However, the U.K. did. So I ended up getting an imported version of what in the UK they called it Orson's Farm. So I have a copy of one of the last Orson's Farm book that collects the remaining U.S. Acre comics.
That's so cool.
But yeah, Scary Scavenger Hunt. This was one of my personal favorite Garfield things ever. I thought it was really fun how much they put together things completely based around Garfield in a haunted mansion searching for donuts. There was a partnership with a donut company that they had at the time. I can't remember the name of the company, but they did like Garfield branded donuts and other types of pastries. And so they used those in the game.
Me looking for blue and white donut boxes not helping very much. But like, if I went into the grocery store, I could show you exactly which box it is. I just can't remember what brand it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
I tried playing this game a little bit before we came on here and recorded, and I legitimately lost. Part of it is because I am just way too click happy and clicked on things that I knew I probably shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I would have beaten this game anyway, just because I think the way that they put it together is so beautiful. Right toward the beginning, there are some things that try to teach me in the game, be careful what you click on. Things, if it looks like it's going to be scary, then it's probably going to scare you, and then your scare meter will go up and you're closer to losing. And then, I didn't want to click on Binky the Clown because I thought he'd be scary, and he actually tells me what to do with something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, it's almost unbeatable too without a guide, specifically because there is a certain part of the game. There's a bookshelf with a bunch of different actual Garfield titles on it, and you have to put them in order based on when they were published. And this was like the early, like we're talking like, I don't know, 2003, 4 maybe. And there was a series of books that came out around that time, and I'm sure today no one would know what on earth those books are. Or the way that those games, those books are laid out. So I would not be surprised if no one would be able to beat it now without a guide, because it's really hard to. I sometimes still I do need a guide to get past that part if I want to do like a little playthrough of it.
How many shelves are there like that in the whole house? Because I ran across one that was, I did it putting the books in alphabetical order. And then it opened up going down to the dungeon with John's brother.
Oh, you mean Lyman, his friend?
Yes, that's who I met.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like this game is what really cemented that whole Lyman is in John's basement thing that Jim said years ago. Which is funny because he's not even in a basement. He's in the basement of a mansion, not John's place. Uh, and it's funny, for that because it got to the point where uh, people kept asking where Lyman was to Jim, that they ended up making a whole episode about it in the Garfield show in 2009, explaining where he went. So they brought him into the series. He was like, here's your answer. And he's like some type of wildlife preserver in some wildlife. I can't remember the full details about it, but he was some sort of wildlife guy that was helping keep some extinct animal from going extinct or something like that. But yeah,
As we start to wrap things up here, what do you think that these games really get right looking at Garfield?
so for Garfield's Nightmare, I think as I mentioned, it's just a it's a side scrolling comic strip more or less. Like if you're looking for platforming Garfieldness, that's kind of what, like, next to Cotton that's one of the best ones to do it with. Especially on a DS. Those aren't there were a lot that came out of it, but that's one of those things that's like, hey, if you want this, it's there for you. Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt, I personally believe, no, outside of Cotton is like, these were games that had direct help and had direct work with the pause artists. Like, they personally worked on these projects and helped bring Garfield to life. And he is put into situations he doesn't want to be, based off of just a mundane thing. Cotton he was watching TV. Garfield comes to a haunted mansion in search of donuts. That's his pure motivation, is finding treasure of donuts. Uh, the game really captured the look of Garfield. It captured the way, like, his walk cycle in the comic strip and how he's handled in all directions. Uh, and it was again, it came at a time when flash games were really at their prime, so this was a good opportunity to get Garfield more into that area. And not only that, but the game was only made by Scavenger Hunt was only made by 5 people total. So to be able to make such a beloved game like that with just that small amount of people can show just like, anyone's able to make this type of stuff.
Yeah, even when you're looking at Garfield's Nightmare, it's 21 people on there that are credited, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are just from pause doing their stuff, and like 4 or 5 of them are playtesting.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so charming about it, is like, they didn't need they didn't need like a game developer to properly make a Garfield game, because they made one for themselves. They made 2 of them, like, quite really good ones, like simple flash games that are quick and easy to do. As I said, outside of the one stint with the bookshelf, like, it's a very easy game to get into, get out of, just do a quick playthrough of.
The thing that really jumps out to me is, besides the obvious love for Garfield from the people who were working on this, both of these games really hit the more surrealist aspect of Garfield. And, he's this cat. He's in the same house every day. He gets bored. So, either adventure out and go someplace and imagine it's even scarier than it is, or imagine there's something weird going on in the house, or just the dream scenario, or something like that, where it's not just seeing, okay, your cat is in the living room again. Garfield gets weird. I think that's what people forget about.
Yeah, yeah. And the comics still get weird too every once in a while. Like, it's people kind of don't realize like there's like alien invasions like every other week or so, but the invasions are so incompetent they're kind of not threats. So like sometimes aliens will come out or like they're snowmen and they're coming out in the summer. Sometimes they're like vegetarians or some other thing. So like and it's kind of like all this kind of fits with how Garfield can be. Like, sometimes it's just mundane stuff, other times there's a lot of fantasy elements that are a part of the world that this just happens. Mondays never die. uh Sometimes you're just going to a haunted house to get donuts and get scared.
What do you think these games get wrong looking at Garfield?
Wrong? So I guess it comes to the wider scope of it being games, right? Like video games aren't necessarily the best avenue to handle Garfield's character because you the player are making him active, and a lot of Garfield's actions and stuff is that he works hard to be lazy. And so video games kind of are counterproductive to that, where he has to do something because he doesn't want to.
I think the only other thing I can really think of is Garfield has such a good cast of characters around him. And I mean, to an extent, in Scary Scavenger Hunt, they're not there. You do see people showing up, but they're just kind of cowering in a corner somewhere. Garfield's Nightmare doesn't really have the other characters from the strip at all. And I wish I would have seen more of them. But there are also strips where Garfield's by himself. So it's not entirely wrong. It's just, I wish there was the part where there were other characters.
Right. There's stuff for Garfield to bounce off of. It's a lot of this stuff really puts him on his own. And the problem with that is, Garfield works better as a foil to something. And when you say Garfield goes on adventure and does this, that's not necessarily Garfield. Garfield he doesn't want to do this, and people are forcing him to do this. So when it comes to that sort of stuff, it's a hard thing to balance it out. Especially in more modern media of Garfield, where they're going on crazy adventures and stuff that kind of go against that with Garfield, like the new Garfield movie that came out not too long ago. He's off of on a milk heist with his father. Like that's that sort of stuff. Like that's not really Garfield's avenue. It's that Garfield wants to do something, and he has to kind of go out of his way to do it. I think Scavenger Hunt does it best. He wants donuts, so he has to brave a scary mansion of jump scares and other stuff in order to get those donuts, right? Whereas Garfield's nightmare is he is having an actual nightmare and is going through this stuff. Like it doesn't really expand beyond that. It's just a point A, point B adventure that kind of just it happens and it happens.
And I don't know about you, but I would definitely go through a scary mansion to get some donuts. If you had somebody who somehow hadn't heard of Garfield and just hadn't been indoctrinated into the cult of Garfield, would you give them either of these games as part of a primer course?
Definitely Scary Scavenger Hunt, specifically because it came out at a time where Garfield was really at like the height of his popularity, and this kind of shows what Paws Inc. kind of represented as a cartoon studio. Like there were artists that were working on these types of side projects that helped expand Garfield's avenue without, being too extravagant about it. Like this was just something that they said, "Hey, we want to do this," or Jim said, "Hey, do this," and they did it, and they put it on the website for free. Like they just did that, And I feel like that type of energy, that type of inspiration, is kind of lost in today's climate of creativity and type of like collaborative energy that comes out of this sort of stuff. Whereas Garfield's Nightmare is basically just a Garfield video game. Like that's cool and all, but there's no real meat behind it outside of just that. Like that this was something that was handled in house. In what I'm referring to as Garfield's Scavenger Hunt is that this was made in house. It was made by actual Garfield artists. There was time, energy, and care put into it. Not saying that Nightmare didn't have that, but it's a lot more obvious to see that in this than in Nightmare because artists, people were a small handful of people just worked on this just because. And, all the other games that were on Garfield.com showcase that as well. They wanted it to be a hub of entertainment for people that just wanted more Garfield.
And the reason that there were so many Flash games made just overall is that it's a relatively easy medium to work in. So, if you've got somebody who already definitely has the art skills, then that is about 7 legs up on just somebody who decided they wanted to make a Flash game.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at Garfield's Nightmare, you're having to make it work on a DS. So, okay, you've got your 2 screens. Even if you're only really using one of them, you have to try to figure out Nintendo's programming that you're going to need to have in there. You're going to have to make it fit onto the cartridge size, which I don't remember how big they are. 32 megs seems about right. Flash games, you don't have any limit because it's just limited by the storage that you have for the website. You don't have to make any sacrifices with the art or anything. Scary Scavenger Hunt, I feel like I would want to give somebody along with like, hey, real quickly read the book and read some of the comics, because the Scary Scavenger Hunt by itself doesn't necessarily give you a good insight into Garfield because he's doing something, but it's a great, I don't even want to say like a side dish on it because it's like a great second entree to reading the comics because they just go so hand in hand together. Garfield's Nightmare doesn't have that benefit, even though it hits some of that more surrealist aspect of where Garfield can go.
Right. Like I wouldn't even like in terms of like Garfield games to recommend people, like I wouldn't even recommend the the 3D platforming games on PlayStation. I would above all else recommend Scary Scavenger Hunt. I think like if there was like I'm going to lay it out right now, like if you wanted the quintessential Garfield experience and like the media that you should absorb to understand Garfield, it would be the comic strip, like the entirety of the comic strip. But if you want prime Garfield, it would be within like the 80s and 90s. Maybe no later than 2005 or 6 or so. Whenever John and Liz officially started dating, I'd say around that area is good. But you can still read the whole thing just to see Garfield's evolution. I would say that the Garfield TV specials and Garfield and Friends. I would say Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt. There might be a couple of side books I might recommend just out of, just like throwing this in there if you want to learn more about Jim and Paws Inc. and whatever. Some of that stuff. And Scary Scavenger Hunt too. I would include that in it as well. That's kind of it.
And anything that Ryan Estrada touched because he's Ryan.
Oh yeah. The Garfield, I would say the first Garfield Boom Studios book comic book series, the first one, because that one actually had the Garfield artist and Mark Evanier who wrote for Garfield and Friends on that. So like it like like they actually had the actual comic artist working on the comic book series. So so maybe like the first couple of those issues before they started changing artists and things like that. So that as well can go there. I think that's like the 2011 2012 comic book series. And then anything Ryan has done.
And finally, we're not going to change anything about Scary Scavenger Hunt because it's perfect just the way it is, and anybody who thinks otherwise is wrong. But I mean, let's make Garfield's Nightmare just a little bit more fun, a little bit more crazy. What Muppets would you use to recast the boss levels?
Muppets?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it would I think I think the Great Gonzo has to be in the clouds. I can't remember what the boss was for that one, but he has to be that boss.
That makes perfect sense.
Because I think he's always about cannons and exploding and doing crazy stunts. So I think something of that nature would have to work.
I think in the castle, Uncle Dudley, because he just seems like he would be a castle monster living down in a dungeon somewhere.
Honestly, yes, I could see that. Oh my gosh, I love Uncle Dudley. Uncle Deadly.
The lava level's hard because I can't think of anybody that's really fire themed.
Animal. It'd have to be Animal.
Yeah, if you're going to get Animal in there, and you have to have Animal somewhere, that's probably the best spot.
And I would say doing something with the chickens in the Arctic just to make it funny.
Well, either them or the penguins. It has to be one of them. But I like your idea of going with the chickens.
I just think having the chickens out of their element and freezing to death, trying to fight Garfield, like the boss ends before they even start.
Well, D, it has been great talking to you about all of this. If people want to hear more from you, where else can they find you around the internet?
Likewise, this has been incredibly fun. People can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Supr D2, SUPRDEE2. I'm there posting my comic rosebuds every day there in newspapers and everywhere else.
And of course, we'll have links to all that down in the show notes because clicking links is so much easier than trying to remember how to spell things. As for me, the best place to find me is over on playcomics.com, where there's links to all the social media things, which is pretty much just Blue Sky and Threads, or Threads and Blue Sky, depending on which order you want to say them in. I don't really care, so take your pick. If you want to be on the show, then there is a link to what I'm looking to get booked the soonest down in the show notes. Check out the list that's on there. That is going to be your best bet to get on the show. So look down there. If you see something for you, if you see something for a friend, either way, let me know. We'll make it happen. If you want to be like, Oh No Lit Class or Dan McMahon, you can give the show money because unfortunately it does cost money to run a podcast, but I would be doing it anyway. So, if you just feel like helping in other ways, you can share it with friends and family and that person that you recognize walking down the hall at school or work every day that you've never actually really talked to, but they seem kind of cool. They at least say hi back to you. Maybe you should tell them about the show. Even if you have no reason to think they'll like it, you should tell them about it anyway. Don't forget that Play Comics is a part of the GonnaGeek.com network, home to such other wonderful shows as Capes on the Couch. Anthony is breaking my heart by not saying anything about me having talked about them at the end here for so long. Sometimes I think that, I don't know, I just think he wants to break my heart. But they're a good show anyway, so you should go listen to them. There's plenty of backlog to catch up on if you haven't. And if you have caught up, then bug them and get them to start making more. If you want to hear Carrington Martin and I talking about all that kids media that taught us all those lessons that we were supposed to go and be a good person and everything, and then now we're adults and we're not supposed to follow those lessons anymore because our capitalist leaders said so, what you want to check out is Sugar, Spite, and Everything is Fine. There's a link for that down in the show notes as well. If you like the music that I'm rudely talking on top of right now, head on over to backingtrack.gg and check out all the great music over there and maybe find something for your own project. But most of all, just grab a game, grab a stack of comics, and go find yourself a new favorite character.